Dr. Svenberg's presentation is a very good introduction to my subject matter, which is space in the African continent. It's an honor to be here. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. Riga is a city, and Latvia as a country is very dear to my heart, and I've been coming here for some years now. In fact, Latvia is a member of a key group in the region of the Nordics, Baltics and Northern Europe that has a unique relationship with the continent of Africa, and is delivering a wide range of activities to help Africa comprehend and deal with the severe effects of climate change, food security, and all the other disasters that it is affecting. And precisely the work that Dr. Svenberg is doing is why I'm here. So, and other aspects of the work that this region is undertaking, so that we can look how we can take those aspects of excellence to the continent of Africa to serve humanity, to serve the population there, to address the societal challenges that they're experiencing. So they are very much in need of assistance, in need of partnership with this region. And I hope my presentation will show why we are engaged in Africa, and in some of the areas why we are helping them develop a partnership with this unique region that has some over 50 years of heritage in space and many decades of space segment, ground segment applications experience that's integral to the big programs that we see in NASA, the European Space Agency, and now JAXA and the Chinese Space Agency work as well. So my name is Saleh Ahmed. I'm the CEO of STSG, which is Space Technology and Science Group, based in Espoo in Finland. But we are a regional multinational organization spanning the Nordics, Baltics, and Northern Europe. Okay. Just a little bit about STSG before I move on to the African continent, to talk about some of the challenges that are there, and then to take a snapshot of a particular area of interest that colleagues here may be interested in terms of some interaction with the continent. Okay, as I said, we're headquartered in Espoo in Finland. We are actually the first Nordic, Baltic and Pan-Central European complete system integrator in small satellite platforms, ground stations and segments. We also give upskilling to developing nations of this world, these ambitious regions and countries who want to become space-faring and to be able to use the space, much needed space to derive services and products. Small satellites, payloads, instruments, ground segments, and whole software range from command control of the space vehicle is what we do, as well as the capacity building through our institutes, and obviously a lot of our products that we develop in collaboration with our counterparts in the African continent, for that matter around the world, are common off-the-shelf components which we engineer for the next particular target audience to serve. Okay. Article areas of interest are Earth observations and communications, remote sensing, and scientific research, as well as technology demonstration, and also Africa is not new to space, so I hope that was qualitative and appreciate. But what it is lacking is how to commercialize the research, take it to the next level, beyond the sort of the depths of the low TROs, and where there's an application actually to derive and develop from the investment in research that is not only run by the national governments of the respective member states of the African continent, but also by Europe, by the European Commission, which invests heavily in Africa as well. Well, the importance of space science technology for Africa. I don't think this to come as any surprise to anybody that human capital is the foremost of our concerns. Human capital is the foremost of our concerns. For Africa to be able to better understand and really grow in independence, to be able to use space science and technology to benefit its population, there is a great degree of knowledge transfer and technology transfer that needs to take place. This is a key challenge for Africa, where it needs to mobilize its institutes, its governments, its policy, its strategies, so that it's all encompassing, so that our region, Nordics and Baltics, and Norway, we are able to engage on a level playing field in terms of trying to transfer skills for their own self-determination. And indeed, there's a lot of innovation that comes from African scientists that adds to their sort of knowledge level capacity building. I think Dr. Slender mentioned some of the projects in Nairobi and elsewhere in Egypt. It shows the excellence in Africa that can be grown, given the sort of, if you like, the nurturing, the support that is required. And indeed, knowledge also develops the economic situations of the continent itself. And there are pockets of advancements in the African continent, and there's huge pockets of very low to zero level advancement in the space science and technology arena. And this is what we engage with. This is what I hope that you all will engage in your work with the African continent, which is much needed. So Space for Africa comes with many challenges, and as you probably appreciate. The lack of resource mobilization, integrated ownership, leadership, or the need of a significant industrial sector in the continent is critical. It's a critical impediment that hinders an all-inclusive growth. And obviously, it also hinders social development as well. So to unblock these impediments, it requires a really dramatic paradigm shift, I'm afraid, in the continent. And I think the people of the African continent realize this themselves. And to unblock these impediments, the continent needs to think, plan, and execute its strategies in collaboration with its support base, of which the Space Technology and Science Group, this region here, is one of its key support bases. And then you have Dr. Bellis, and you have Big Birds as well, who is involved, and other colleagues here who I know are involved in helping the African Union Commission really advance in this area, in challenging the norms and rattling the cage and saying you have to change, if not for yourself, but change for the country, for the good of the people, because it's much needed, otherwise it will be too late. There is a very sort of profound statement we see in the African continent. It says something like this: an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens, and represents a dynamic force in the global arena, is what we must work towards. And that is so true, indeed. So the realization of this vision for space must be premised on self-reliance, regional integration, which is needed in-house in the African continent, help with their industrialization from a basic level, and enhance partnerships, and that is what they are doing well, is their partnership. In particular, I speak for our region, the Nordic, the Baltic, and Central Europe here. And they have developed an agenda known as Agenda 2063, which some colleagues may be aware of here. And the drivers in that agenda are promoting science, technology, and innovation, investing in human capital development, managing natural resources in a sustainable manner, effective private and public development. This public-private partnership, this PPP, is something that Europe has really harnessed well. The European Commission, the European Parliament has harnessed very well, and it works, but it has to be managed very well. I think, dare I say, that we've also learned lessons from the PPP in Europe as well. And I think that we are now in a position where we can share some of the lessons learned, having done PPP in various sectors of our community. And yes, and the mobilization of innovation is key. Letting the young scientists to really go out and experience exchange platforms in other parts of the world. We are looking at bringing young scientists from the continent here into our region, into the Baltics, into the Nordics, to transfer some of the knowledge and also work with us to really look at how we can develop them so that they themselves can innovate some of the systems that are required for some of their platforms that they're developing. So in driving this AU vision within the context of the key drivers, it is imperative that any plans actually must get taken in a sustainable manner. I think for all too long there has been pockets of funding that has been sporadically allocated to schemes and plans in the African continent with no real outcomes, no real review, and no real critical analysis of what it had actually delivered, which a lot of times is perhaps not much. I don't know if colleagues here may share that experience, but we certainly have encountered that. But also, there is a need to address the challenge of transformation in what is required in output from space-based products and services that will actually benefit society as a whole, and to broaden and strengthen infrastructural and human resource base to really significantly strengthen and modernize the science and technology capability in the African continent. So Africa must recognize the role of space science and technology and the role that it plays in being an essential tool for the sustainability of its natural resources, which has gone in a sustained manner of erosion over some time, and the fact that investing, creating a high technology sector does pay dividends. I think some time ago, PricewaterhouseCoopers did a study of every euro invested in the space arena gave you back €9. This was studied at Europe, and it was clear, certainly in the European public diplomacy area, that investing in space pays off in terms of human productivity and growth, but also pays off in terms of human development and appreciation from the common person. So it is actually considerable contributions towards creating an enabling environment, and that is what we're trying to work towards. There's a lot of colleagues here also who are working towards that. Bigworth and Arnold here, who have been working for some time, over a year now, along within this group, this SDSG group, to really create a receiving platform to appreciate the knowledge transfer, the technology transfer that can actually take place. And it's facilitation that is needed by the governments of the African continent. And I believe they are waking up from what's the word? Smelling the coffee, I think, at this moment in time. So a very positive note that we are experiencing from our counterparts in Africa. We're also working with the African nations to develop the African space policy. And again, some colleagues there have seen that policy. It is considered to be a first in a series of instruments that will help formalize Africa's space program as a whole. And this policy provides guiding principles that should really be adhered to in order to ensure sustainable and fully effective space programs that will serve the needs of the African continent, but also serve the needs in terms of the knowledge and technology transfer and the partnerships that our region, the Nordics and the Baltics, and our Northern Central European colleagues will undertake over a 10-year span. We have actually signed a 10-year agreement, the African Union Space Technology and Science Group SDSG Memorandum of Understanding that lasts for 10 years for this region to collaborate in a very enhanced way with counterparts in the African continent to deliver and closely work with addressing societal challenges through the space segment, through the ground segment, and developing integrated applications from raw space data so that these applications can benefit and address some of the challenges that are there. But all this against the backdrop that one actually needs to develop the educational base in the African continent. And again, here, Latvia and our partners around the world and most are key contributors to that effect. And you here today are key contributors to that effect. I don't think it will come as a surprise to you if I was to say to you Africa presents a significant growth potential. What is it, just over 1.1 billion now? Projected to be 2 billion very soon. So it's a huge market in terms of a user community for space-derived services, and that is where I think colleagues here should be. That is a huge community to receive space-derived services, which actually addresses simplification of the end user's interaction with the space sector, and a simplification that we need to work towards applications that actually really make sense and add value rather than needing a PhD degree to actually use one of these applications that are developed now. So this growth potential needs to be realised in a sustainable manner, and I go back to the sustainable issue because there is the key difficulty in the continent of understanding that things have to be done in a sustainable manner. Let us not just address issues in Africa with pockets of money and then go away and come back for another 10 years and deliver another pocket of money. Let's allow them, let's enable them to grow in independence and autonomy in partnership with our skills and our knowledge in this region. Let them grow in their independence so that they can be self-determined, so that they can really develop the systems in collaboration with us and deliver the space vehicles, the satellites that they really need. We are developing 2 satellites, one in Ethiopia, remote sensing and observation, and also one in the African Union, again, remote sensing and observation with this degree of scientific instrumentation that STSG is building for the African Union and Ethiopia over the next 3 to 4 years. And those will contribute in a huge way to Africa's path of knowledge, wanting knowledge transfer, wanting technology transfer, to begin to develop systems of this kind of their own. And no doubt they will require assistance and hand-holding, if you like, from us here in this region, but obviously there will be a lot of collaborative research that will take place that will feed into innovation of the whole component and scientific instrumentation arena. So the prime intention in realising this potential of the African continent should always be directed towards the improvement of quality of life and the creation of wealth for all its citizens, and that is paramount. And one example I would give of really public diplomacy in action, where the understanding of space and its relevance and input into public well-being, into economic well-being, is one demonstration that I can make perhaps, is that in the United Kingdom, space generates around £9.5 billion annually, and it creates around 70,000 direct jobs in the sector, with another 30,000 associated jobs in the sector as well. So these are the kind of effects that it can have. And if you multiply that by the 54 countries of the African Union Commission, you can see the multiplying effect. So what is the opportunity? Well, space science and technology and many benefits that can be derived from its utilisation has played a significant role in the international, regional, national, economic and social development efforts. But also, space presents a unique opportunity for cooperation and sharing of enabling infrastructure, including the data side, in proactively managing, among others, disease outbreaks, and we see Ebola now. In fact, we have an application in STSG now that's looking at helping particular countries in the African continent address the Ebola issue again, based on space data and the connectivity, enabling power of space systems. And also looking at natural resources, the environment, response to natural hazards, disasters, weather forecasting, and something in Finland that we are compelled to do, considering also weather climate there in Helsinki and Espoo. Climate change mitigation, adaptation, agriculture, and also the important one, food security, and not least the peacekeeping mission and dealing with conflicts in the African continent, of which unfortunately there is much. So space-derived services, Earth observation, satellite communications, navigation and positioning are key critical economic development needs in the continent. The benefits of these services have accrued to Africa indirectly as consumers of services provided by multinational companies and intergovernmental agencies. While some of these products and services have helped to serve the socio-economic needs of the continent, Africa cannot really boast to possess the technical know-how to participate independently in space-related activities as a service provider. Hopefully not for long, but only as a consumer of space-derived services and products does Africa now move. And what we're trying to do is take Africa in another direction of self-determination. And hence comes the desire, their desire, for a growing independence, a growing ability to understand this sector well. So new applications of space science and technology are constantly being discovered, and spin-offs from space technologies have led to advancements in such diverse fields as medicine, material science, computer science, and exploiting these applications and technological advancements for Africa's social and economic development drives for immeasurable benefits, and they get that now. However, the high cost of participating in space activities has somewhat hindered the ability of many countries in the African Union, particularly those on the African continent, to fully take advantage of the practical benefits that space science and technology offers. Space is benefiting people in Africa in a number of ways. Space applications are effective tools for monitoring and conducting assessments of the environment, managing the use of natural resources, providing early warnings, and managing natural disasters, providing education, health services in rural and remote areas, and connecting people around the world. Space-based applications are widely used in agriculture, which remains an important economic sector in much of Africa. And space-based information systems play a significant role in risk reduction and disaster management of the African continent, which is heavily affected by natural disasters such as droughts, floods, storms, and cyclones. And pest control is another one that is much needed at this moment in time. So perhaps and I can catch a moment at some point to discuss this. So space-related applications are heavily employed in transportation and services. Obviously, those goods that are produced in Africa have a really difficult job in getting to their destinations. And that really hinders economic growth in Africa. And again, space technology is able to add to alleviating some of those stress points. So access to transport allows mobility, promotes commerce, and fosters education and health. And in many African countries, transport access rates and network quality rates are very, very low. So if Africa is to leapfrog effectively into this nirvana, into these technological advancements of the 21st century, the continent needs to develop indigenous critical mass of trained space scientists and engineers. And that is what I hope that colleagues here will contribute to in a very critical way. But also, we need to actively look at solutions to the continent's problem. Africa has to build its capabilities in space exploration. There's a lot of interest in space exploration across Africa. Constellation programs, Earth observation systems, navigation, positioning, satellite systems, communications, education within a global context, that is. In the process towards the development of the continental space program, Africa will not need to reinvent the wheel. There are some lead African countries that are in the process of developing their own space-based capabilities and programs, and have proceeded to build institutions to manage these programs, but not much. These national efforts collectively represent the seed that could be nurtured toward continental programs without devolving the focus of the national space programs themselves. There are some member states who are very protective about their own programs, and it is striking a balance between national programs and a connected African continental program. And that is what we're working towards. Currently, there are a number of pragmatic initiatives that have a regional dimension, and the pragmatic challenge is to bring all of these pockets of excellence together so that we can create programmatic synergies, and synergies is much more important, and complementarities. Complementarities is something that we have had to deal with in Europe, had to deal with within the European Space Agency, but also within the European Commission's Space Research Programme, is looking at who's good at what, and bringing them together in a complementarity form. So that is also what we do in the African continent, to foster collective action towards Africa's development, which will eventually enable the continent to be a global space player in due course. There are only a few countries on the continent that have actually endeavoured to formalise national space programmes. That probably doesn't surprise you. In many African countries, there remains limited appreciation of the potential role and benefits of space in socio-economic development study. And in fact, we are in STSC doing an African-wide study, which is looking at the socio-economic impact of space, investing in space, to a wider audience in the African community. We hope to deliver that in the next 6 months to the African Union. So in many countries, there remains limited appreciation of the potential role and benefits of space and its socio-economic development, which now needs to be addressed. There is thus a clear an urgent need to build awareness as to the critical necessity of space applications and business among the collective political, scientific and industrial leadership of the African countries. And we're working towards that, and also the ministerial colleagues in Latvia, ministerial colleagues in our respective member states of the Nordics and Baltics are very much, I'm happy to say, very much engaged in that process. It's the political lobby in the African arena, and that is much to the praise and the support of the scientific community in lobbying the political community to really take a pace in this direction. And I think we're slowly but surely getting there. So the use of space for development presents many opportunities that cannot be ignored, and Africa has to respond to these challenges and opportunities. And hence, within this context, there is a critical need to make the benefits of space science technology available to all African countries. There is thus a growing need for Africa to develop well-structured policy frameworks that guide the implementation of the continental space program that will enable the continent to exploit its space resources in a more coordinated and systematic manner with the region of the Northern Baltics and Central Europe to play a key part in looking at commercialization and energizing communities to innovate in this particular area. Earth observation and remote sensing are modern instruments to gather information about the nature and condition of the land, the sea, atmosphere. And located in various orbits, there are satellites that use sensors that actually enable for those particular areas to be addressed. And it's the remote sensing area that, again, our African counterparts are very keen on in developing their own sensors with the understanding that they have their particular needs. So these sensors will be developed with our collaboration, but in partnership with African Union scientists who have a particular understanding of the need that these sensors need to address the particular data sets that they need to deliver. So naturally, the African continent is most keen on, again, on satellite communications to really disseminate information and to help its connectivity. As a key technology that could bring its developing countries or undeveloped countries to participate in the build-up of global information infrastructure. It wants to be part of the global move, but it is inhibited by its take-up of technology. Research indicates that wireless systems are the most cost-effective way to develop or operate telecommunications networks in areas where user density is lower than, say, 200 subscribers per square kilometre. Such wireless systems can be installed 5 to 10 times faster and at a rate 50% lower cost than landline networks. So technologies for education and training, in particular distance learning and multimedia, must be instrumental in meeting the needs of the African countries that have to train and integrate a large number of people in a widely dispersed and under-equipped areas. So this is where we are bringing on board organizations like Nokia, for example, who is our own regional facilitator, looking at how Nokia can contribute to this effort in the African continent with its own terrestrial-based systems, which will be connected to our space-based segment. So many African countries have to cope with large-scale disease outbreaks, and Ebola is such. And telemedicine is one area that we're looking at how we can help the African continent. And any ideas, colleagues who perhaps would like to work on in the area of telemedicine, please do speak to myself and Arnold who's here and Viglas here. We'll be very happy to listen to you and look at how we can integrate that to our overall work as well. Which time do I have? 2 minutes ago. All right. If I now just move on to the research topics, there are quite an interest in the African continent. This is from our sort of discussions with members of the community in the African continent. You will see that I hope that not to your surprise, that geomagnetic research, ionospheric research, space patterns, space weather, and physics are key areas that they express a need to learn. But also, in terms of looking at space weather, countries like South Africa, which has gone some way in understanding and installing systems to deal with space weather, is a key driver who is willing to really help in this area of disseminating information and excite people around the region to learn a little bit more. And the Hermanus Bay, I don't know if anybody's been to the Hermanus Bay location where there's a huge setup there looking at the space weather infrastructure, contributing to the space weather infrastructure, as you can see around the world. That's a great starting point for us to look at how we can disseminate some of the learning of this subject to the wider African community. So the SDSG Integrated National Atmospheric and Space Science Programme that we're looking at in this delivery of capacity building across the African continent is through honours and MSc programs, funded by South Africa, but also other member states as well. It involves a number of universities and research institutions for these programs. We are looking for colleagues who perhaps may be interested in mentoring African continental students. So please, again, we welcome a discussion with colleagues who may be interested in the mentoring program, and also to look at how there might be opportunities perhaps to host some African students in Namibia, perhaps also in the region as well. A lot of engagement at the moment that we have worked across the African continent has looked at taking some of the researchers to commercialize some of the research around the areas of electrometers, GPS receivers, IONS, VF wave receivers. These are a couple of areas that we've managed to really help colleagues commercialize in. But also, a lot of that has been dictated by national funding that's been available in the respective countries, of which really there has not been much. So a lot of that has been looking at how we in our region, in our Nordics and Baltics, can take some of their research and take it to a commercialization platform. So how does the future of space science technology look in Africa? Well, many countries are trying to join the space race, which is good. There's great momentum there, energized by the African Union Commission. And also, in fact, a memorandum of understanding between this region and the African Union was actually signed here in Riga some months ago. And also, we should be looking at some elementary programs, how we can engage institutes in Latvia to really mobilize some of this learning. And also the fundamental area of building skills and competencies of the community there. Data access and management is a key challenge in the African continent. In fact, it's a key challenge in Europe. With all the abundance of data that we have developed, we have in storage from these many developed space platforms that are actually in orbit. In fact, we have to ask our US colleagues to help us develop applications from our own data. So in fact, it's no surprise that the European Commission's Horizon 2020 space research budget really focuses on developing understanding of utilizing space data and making integrated applications. And again, that is, I hope, an area that we will perhaps move towards in helping our African counterparts too. So, the future of Africa is bright, and it will be bright with your engagement, I hope. And you do have a role to play. Latvia has a role to play, and the Nordics, Baltics, and our Central European region has a role to play. I hope that you contribute to that effort. I look forward to working with you. Thank you.